The sky tore open like a wound. I was standing on the ridge above the valley, rifle in my hands, when the first alien warships broke through the clouds. Black metal wings spread across the horizon, swallowing the daylight. People around me whispered in panic, but I stayed silent, watching. For 100 years, the stories had been told. About a race somewhere in the void, sharpening its teeth, building armies, preparing to wipe us out. Humanity laughed at first. Then we feared. Then we got ready. The aliens had been studying us longer than we even knew they existed. They dissected our history, measured our weaknesses, and called us predictable. To them, we were savages holding sticks. They trained for a century, convinced Earth would be nothing more than a trophy hunt. But what they didn't understand was this. Humanity doesn't prepare for war the same way they do. We don't follow rules. We don't fight clean. And when cornered, we fight with a madness that no strategy can contain. The first blast came like thunder. Their cannons lit up the valley, fire tearing through buildings. Men and women screamed, children wailed, and soldiers around me clutched their weapons with shaking hands. One of the lieutenants shouted for everyone to take positions, but the sound of alien steel marching on the ground drowned out his voice. I saw them then, rows upon rows of armored beasts, towering, glowing eyes burning with arrogance. Their movements were precise, disciplined, drilled into perfection over 100 years of training. To them, we were already dead. And that arrogance was their first mistake. The order came through the comms. Release the Black Hounds. My heart slammed in my chest. The world shook as metal gates opened and outcharged Earth's secret weapons, not machines, not tanks, but men. Men like me, enhanced, broken down, rebuilt for one purpose, to kill what was never supposed to be killed. We were experiments at first, called monsters by the same governments that made us. But when word of the invasion came, we became necessary. I charged with them. The air filled with screams, gunfire, and explosions. My body burned with rage, the chemicals in my blood making everything sharp, fast, brutal. I fired my rifle until the barrel smoked, then tore an alien out of its armor with my bare hands. The look in its eyes, shock, real fear, was the only fuel I needed. 6 minutes. That's all it took. The first 3 were slaughter. Humans unleashed every forbidden weapon we'd been too afraid to use before. The skies turned red as satellites rained down fire. Cities lit up with rail cannons that split their warships apart like paper. In the dirt, we fought like animals. No formations, no rules, just survival. Aliens were strong, but they hesitated when their perfect lines broke. We didn't. The next 2 minutes were chaos. Their commanders screamed orders in a language I couldn't understand, but it didn't matter. Their arrogance crumbled. I saw one alien officer run. Another dropped its weapon and froze when a child, barely old enough to hold a knife, charged at it, screaming. The last minute was silence. Their warships fell from the sky, their soldiers scattered, and the valley was littered with burning corpses. My hands shook, covered in blood that wasn't all alien. Smoke filled my lungs, but I laughed. A bitter, broken laugh. 100 years of their training, 6 minutes of our fury. That was the difference. And as I stood there, staring at their bodies, I realized something else. The galaxy was watching. Word would spread. They would all know now. Earth wasn't prey. We were predators, the deadliest kind. And this was just the beginning. The valley still smoked long after the last alien scream had died. I remember standing in the middle of that battlefield, chest heaving, blood thick on my hands. Around me, soldiers were coughing, limping, or just sitting down on the dirt, as if their bones had finally given up holding them together. The bodies of the enemy lay scattered in heaps, armor split open, faces twisted in ways I almost pitied. Almost. 6 minutes. That number would echo in history forever. Not an hour, not even a day. 6 minutes to turn their century of training into ash. But in that silence, I knew something none of the men around me wanted to admit. We hadn't really won. Not yet. Because war doesn't end when the last body falls. It begins in the questions that come after. And already those questions were forming in my mind. The comms in my ear crackled with voices. Generals, politicians, commanders, all speaking at once. Some were shouting in celebration, some demanding status reports, and others already arguing about what the victory meant. I ignored them. I just stared at the alien officer lying a few feet away from me. Its chest caved in where my boot had crushed its armor. Its eyes were open, glowing faintly even in death. There was something in them that haunted me. Not just fear, but disbelief. As if the very idea of losing to humans was impossible until the final second it drew breath. That disbelief would spread. Their kind would whisper about this day, and the galaxy would listen. And I wondered, would they come again? Or would something worse follow in their place? By nightfall, the valley had turned into a graveyard. Fires still burned, and the air stank of fuel, blood, and scorched metal. Drones buzzed overhead, scanning the wreckage, collecting samples. Scientists walked among the dead like vultures, their white coats stained by the dirt and blood they stepped through without care. I sat on a chunk of fallen alien steel, rifle across my knees, while a medic wrapped my forearm. The bandage burned, but I didn't flinch. I had stopped feeling pain years ago when they changed me, turned me into what they called an enhanced operative. Pain was just noise now. The medic glanced up at me. "You don't even blink, do you?" I didn't answer. What was the point? Nearby, I heard one of the officers giving a speech to the cameras. His voice boomed across the valley through portable speakers. "Today, humanity has proven what we are capable of. 100 years of alien arrogance ended in 6 minutes of human strength. We are no longer victims of the stars. We are their nightmare." The soldiers cheered, raising their weapons. Some fired into the air, shouting curses at the dead aliens. It was a moment of pride, of defiance. But I couldn't join in, not because I disagreed with the words. No, they were true, but because I knew what was coming next. Pride always brings division, and division brings weakness. The news spread faster than fire. By the time we were evacuated from the valley and brought back to the capital, the entire planet was shaking with the story. Screens on every street corner showed images of the destroyed alien fleet, the charred remains of their warriors, and the smirking faces of human generals declaring victory. People celebrated in the streets. Cities erupted in riots of joy, strangers hugging strangers, children painting their faces with blood-red streaks, chanting, 6 minutes, 6 minutes, as if it were a holy phrase. But celebration turned into something darker within hours. In some cities, crowds stormed government buildings, demanding that leaders stop hiding alien technology and share it with the people. Others called for vengeance, urging the armies to launch into space and strike the enemy worlds before they could regroup. And in the shadows, I saw fear. Ordinary men and women who looked at the sky now with dread, whispering, "If these weren't the strongest aliens out there, then what else is waiting for us?" I couldn't sleep that night. I sat on the roof of the barracks, watching the smoke trail across the sky where the invasion had come. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. Not from fear, but from something worse. An emptiness. The fight had lasted 6 minutes, but my body had been ready for 6 hours, 6 days, 6 months if it needed. When it ended so quickly, I felt robbed, like a predator who had sunk his teeth in but wasn't allowed to finish the kill. I hated that feeling. and deep down, I knew I wasn't the only one. 2 days later, I was called into the War Council chamber. The room reeked of polished steel and expensive cigars. Politicians sat on one side, generals on the other, scientists in the back rows scribbling notes. They all looked at me when I entered, though none of them said my name. To them, I wasn't a man. I was a weapon they had unleashed, and now they weren't sure how to put me back in the cage. The council leader, a fat man with eyes like glass beads, leaned forward. "You were there on the ground. Tell us what you saw." I told them. About the arrogance in the aliens' eyes. About how easily their formations crumbled when chaos hit. About the way fear spread faster than fire through their ranks. They listened in silence. Then one of the generals asked the question I had been waiting for. "Do you believe they'll come again?" I met his gaze and said, "No." The room stirred, whispers running through the seats. "They won't come back," I continued, "because they can't. We didn't just defeat their army, we humiliated them. And humiliation is a wound that spreads. They'll tell the others, whoever else is out there, that humanity isn't prey, that Earth is a death trap." The fat council leader leaned back, smirking. "Then we are safe." I shook my head. Number safe isn't the word. They won't come back. But something else will. Something worse. We've drawn attention now. The galaxy knows there's a species on Earth that kills trained armies in 6 minutes. And predators don't ignore prey like that. They test it, they challenge it, they break it. The room went quiet. And that was when I realized the real war hadn't started yet. The cracks began to show within weeks. Nations argued over who owned the alien wreckage. Some claimed rights to the fallen ships because they had been shot down over their land. Others demanded the technology be shared equally across the planet. Fights broke out in the UN chambers. Fists slammed on tables, threats of war spilling from the mouths of men who had just stood united against a common enemy. The soldiers, the ones enhanced like me, were treated like heroes in some cities, monsters in others. Parents warned their children not to look us in the eye. Reporters called us the government's dogs. There were whispers of rogue operatives who refused to come back from the field, men who had tasted blood and didn't want to stop. And me? I felt the pull every night. In my dreams, I saw the alien officer's eyes again, wide with fear, the way its breath rattled as life left it. I woke up sweating, craving that look again, craving the fight. But the fight was gone, and men like me don't live well without war. The galaxy reacted faster than we expected. Within a month, our satellites intercepted transmissions from deep space, not from the same race we had defeated, but from others. Different signals, different codes. Some sounded like warnings, others like challenges. The scientists argued over the translations, but one message was clear. The humans are dangerous. It should have made me proud. It didn't, because the more they feared us, the more they would want to test us. And as I watched the politicians argue over scraps of alien steel, as I saw the people turn against one another in the streets, I knew the truth. Humanity wasn't ready for the galaxy. We could kill in 6 minutes. But could we survive what came after? That night, I stood alone on the barracks roof again, staring at the stars. My rifle leaned against the wall, my hands scarred and restless. Somewhere out there, eyes were watching, measuring, waiting. And for the first time since the battle, I felt a smile pull at my lips. Because maybe that was what I wanted too, not peace, not safety. War. The real one. The one that would prove, once and for all, what humans were meant to be. When the alien fleet burned in our skies, we thought the story ended there. But stories like this don't end. They echo. And in the endless dark between stars, the echo of 6 minutes shook entire civilizations. I first heard about it through the intelligence feeds, encrypted transmissions captured by our satellites, patched through to my command center. The signals weren't from the same species we had slaughtered. These were different. Voices like gravel, others like song, some screeching so loud it hurt just to hear them through the comms. Our scientists broke the codes line by line, their faces pale as the messages came clear. The galaxy was afraid. Not of Earth, not yet, but of what we represented. "They call us the Defiant," one of the analysts said, scrolling through alien glyphs on the screen. "Others just say the 6-minute race." I leaned closer, my fists tightening. "What else?" "They're divided," the analyst replied. "Some think we're too dangerous to be left alive. Others, they want to study us, to see how we fight, how we kill. There's even talk of—" He hesitated, swallowing. "Hunting us for sport." The room went still. I could feel the rage boiling in my chest, the old instincts itching for blood. Hunt us? They still didn't understand? Humanity wasn't prey. We never were. But as much as I wanted to laugh at their arrogance, I knew better. These weren't the same fools who had trained for a century just to die in minutes. These were older civilizations, sharper, crueler, patient enough to let others fight their wars until the timing was right. They wouldn't come marching in neat lines. They'd test us, fracture us, weaken us from the inside. And in that moment, I knew Earth wasn't ready. The broadcasts came next. Pirate signals bleeding into our networks, hijacking our feeds, voices not meant for human ears. Some were threats, others warnings. One, in particular, still claws at my memory. It began with static. Then a voice, guttural and sharp like broken glass, filled every screen across the base. 6 minutes. That is what you boast. 6 minutes against children who thought themselves warriors. We are not children. We are not arrogant. We are the silence that follows your screams. We will come not as armies. We will come as shadows. And when your world burns, your 6 minutes will be forgotten. The feed cut, leaving only the sound of my own heartbeat. Some of the younger soldiers looked shaken, shifting in their seats. But me? I only smiled. Let them come. Let them test us. I wanted to see their silence. I wanted to tear it apart, but the truth was, humanity itself was breaking faster than the enemy could touch us. Every council session was a war of words, nations demanding their share of alien wreckage, generals refusing to share new weapons with their allies, spies trading secrets for power. And in the streets, people rioted, not just in joy now, but in hunger, fear, and rage. I walked through the Capitol one evening, hood pulled over my face to hide the soldier brand burned into my skin. Civilians screamed at each other in the alleys, one side chanting, "6 minutes makes us gods," while the other shouted back, "6 minutes makes us targets." I stopped to watch 2 men brawl in the gutter, fists bloody, one yelling about vengeance, the other about survival. They weren't fighting aliens. They were fighting each other. And I realized, the galaxy didn't need to break us. We were already doing it ourselves. 3 weeks after the invasion, the first test arrived. Not an army, not a fleet. Just a single ship, sleek and silent, slipping into orbit like a shadow. Our satellites caught it too late. By the time we scrambled jets, the ship had already deployed something into the atmosphere. At first, we thought it was a bomb, but no explosions came. Instead, people started dying. Quietly, randomly. Their bodies collapsed in the streets, no wounds, no blood, just silence. Our scientists worked around the clock, dissecting corpses, analyzing the air, the water, the food, nothing. No trace of poison, no radiation. It was as if the victims had simply stopped living. They called it the whisper. I saw it with my own eyes. A soldier in my unit was laughing one moment, cleaning his weapon, and the next he just fell. His eyes wide open, breath gone, body limp. No warning, no pain, just silence. The fear spread faster than the deaths. People locked themselves in their homes, convinced the air was cursed. Markets collapsed. Armies froze. Politicians screamed at each other while the whisper claimed hundreds, then thousands. But it stopped as suddenly as it began. 2 days, and then nothing. No more deaths. No more shadow ship. A message appeared in our networks the next morning, 4 words etched in alien script. 6 minutes mean nothing. The world erupted. Some demanded retaliation, launch a fleet, strike at any star suspected of harboring the enemy. Others preached surrender, arguing humanity couldn't withstand enemies who could kill without firing a shot. And me? I sat in silence, staring at the dead soldier's face in my memory. The aliens weren't trying to win yet. They were testing us, measuring our fear, and worse, they were winning that part. I was summoned again to the War Council. This time the chamber stank of sweat and panic. Screens lit the walls with maps of the planet, red dots marking every whispered death. Politicians shouted at generals, generals shouted back. Scientists babbled about theories none of them understood. When I entered, the noise stopped. They looked at me like they wanted me to be the answer, like I was the weapon that could kill fear itself. The council leader leaned forward. His face was pale, sweat dripping down his temple. "What do we do?" I stared at him for a long time. "We stop pretending." His eyes narrowed. Pretending. That 6 minutes made us gods. It didn't. It made us a target. The galaxy doesn't care about our victory. They care about breaking us. And if we keep tearing ourselves apart, they won't need armies. We'll hand them our world on a platter. The room was silent. Some looked ashamed, others angry. But I knew my words didn't matter. Politicians don't hear truth. They only hear what feeds their power. I walked out before they could argue. That night, I dreamed of the valley again. The fire, the smoke, the alien officer's eyes. But this time it wasn't fear I saw in them. It was pity, as if even in death it knew the truth, that humanity would destroy itself faster than any enemy could. I woke drenched in sweat, fists clenched so tight my nails drew blood. I hated that dream, because deep down I knew it might be right. The galaxy didn't need a war to end us. They just needed to wait, and the waiting had already begun. The whisper ended, but its shadow didn't. For 2 days it killed without warning, and for 2 weeks after it killed in people's minds. The bodies were buried, but fear stayed alive. In every street corner, in every crowded market, in every soldier's bunk. People carried it in their lungs like smoke. I could see it in their eyes. The way they glanced at each other, wondering if the next cough, the next stumble, the next sudden silence would mean another body collapsing. The aliens hadn't just tested our defenses, they had tested our sanity. And we failed. The first cracks came from the governments. Nations that had stood side by side during the 6-minute slaughter now pointed fingers. They accused each other of secretly harboring alien tech, of bargaining with the enemy, of hiding cures to the whisper. Treaties burned. Alliances collapsed. I watched it happen in real time. Leaders shouting through screens, their voices rising like rabid dogs, each of them more afraid of losing power than losing the war. And while they argued, the people turned on each other. Riots lit the cities. Mobs stormed hospitals, convinced doctors were hiding whisper vaccines. Soldiers fired into crowds, their hands shaking, unsure whether they were shooting rebels or just starving civilians. It wasn't war anymore. It was madness. And I knew exactly what the aliens were doing. They didn't need to invade again. They just had to watch. Watch us break ourselves apart. In the barracks, the men whispered about leaving. Some wanted to take their weapons and vanish into the countryside. Others talked about forming their own militias, fighting not aliens, but the politicians who had left them to rot. I listened in silence, keeping my rage bottled. These were men I trusted, men who had fought beside me, and now they sounded more like enemies than brothers. One night, I caught two of them arguing in the mess hall. The first slammed his fist on the table. "We shouldn't wait for orders. We should take control, protect the civilians, build something real, not this circus of liars." The other spat back. "Protect them? From who? The aliens? Or from you when you start playing king?" I stepped between them before blood spilled, but I knew it was only a matter of time. The whisper hadn't just killed people, it had killed trust. Then came the message. Not from Earth. Not from any human channel. It broke into our military comms like a knife in the dark. The same guttural alien tongue as before, but this time translated almost instantly. "We see you tearing yourselves apart. 6 minutes of fury, yet your weakness is not in battle. It is in peace. You cannot hold it. You are animals that eat yourselves. The galaxy need not touch you. You will fall alone." The transmission ended with laughter. Cold, hollow, echoing across every screen in the base. I smashed my fist into the wall so hard blood streaked my knuckles. Because they were right. And that truth burned worse than any wound. The following week, the first rogue faction declared itself. A coalition of ex-soldiers, deserters, and militia leaders, they broadcast across the world. "The governments have failed. The whisper proved it. We will not die waiting for alien shadows. We take survival into our own hands." They called themselves the Iron Hand. And they weren't just words. They moved fast. Convoys of stolen tanks, raids on armories, entire towns bending to their will in exchange for protection. They weren't enemies of the aliens. They were enemies of us, and the worst part? People followed them, because at least the Iron Hand promised strength. The politicians tried to downplay it, called them criminals, called them terrorists. But I knew better. They were a mirror of what we all were becoming. I was ordered to track them, hunt them down, kill my own kind. The irony wasn't lost on me. 6 minutes to slaughter an alien army, and now I was meant to turn that same fury against humans. But I followed orders. I always had. We tracked one of their convoys through the wastelands outside the capital. Dust storms whipped across the horizon as we lay in wait, rifles ready, breathing through cloth masks. When the trucks rolled past, painted with crude iron symbols, my commander gave the signal. We opened fire. The first truck exploded, bodies flung into the dirt. The others swerved, men spilling out, guns blazing. It wasn't like the alien battle. There was no precision, no arrogance, just desperation and rage. We killed them fast, efficient. But when I pulled the mask off one of the bodies, I froze. It was a boy, 16 at most, barely old enough to shave. His rifle was too big for his hands. His eyes were open, glassy, staring up at me like he couldn't understand why death had found him so soon. 6 minutes against aliens, 16 years against his own life. Both ended the same way. I dropped the rifle and walked away from the body. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. That night, I couldn't sleep. Not because of guilt. Guilt was something I'd buried long ago. But because I realized the aliens didn't even need to fight us. They just needed us to keep pulling the trigger on each other. By the end of the month, whispers spread of other factions rising. Some worshipped the aliens, calling them gods who had come to test humanity's worth. Others wanted revenge, demanding we build fleets and strike first before the galaxy struck again. Every group saw themselves as saviors. Every group saw the others as traitors. And in the middle of it, soldiers like me were thrown like knives at whoever the government wanted gone that week. But I wasn't blind. I could see the truth. The real war wasn't between us and the aliens anymore. It was between us and ourselves. And every day, we were losing. One evening, I stood again on the barracks roof, staring at the stars. I thought about the alien officer's eyes in the valley, the pity I thought I saw there. Maybe it hadn't been pity. Maybe it had been amusement. Because they knew all along what I was only now beginning to accept. Humanity's greatest strength, our fury, our defiance, was also our greatest weakness. We could burn anything in 6 minutes. But we couldn't hold together for 6 weeks without turning the fire inward. And in the distance, out there in the endless dark, I knew others were watching, waiting, smiling. The whispers from the stars grew louder. Not the alien weapon that killed in silence. No, this was different. These whispers carried words, arguments, threats. And for the first time, we weren't just hearing one enemy. We were hearing many. The galaxy was awake now. Our intelligence feeds bled with stolen transmissions. Every night, I sat in the dark briefing rooms as analysts replayed them, their faces pale in the glow of the screens. The voices were different, some guttural, some mechanical, others high-pitched and grating, but the meaning was always clear. They were talking about us. One council argued to exterminate us before we grew stronger. Another argued to cage us, study us like lab animals. A third said we should be left alone, because killing us might draw worse monsters out of our kind. They didn't agree on the solution. But they all agreed on one thing. Humanity could not be ignored. One night the feed picked up a full recording. It wasn't scraps or broken signals. This was an entire meeting. On the screen, 12 alien figures sat in a circle of light. I couldn't name their species, but I'll never forget them. Some were armored giants, others slithering things with too many eyes. One looked like nothing but smoke caged in glass. The translation came through slow, broken, but enough to make my blood boil. The first spoke. 6 minutes, an infection that spreads through fear. They must be cut out before the rot spreads. Another hissed back, and risk awakening more. They fight with madness, not order. They have no ceiling, no limit. If we strike wrong, they will adapt. A third slammed a clawed hand against the table. Then let them adapt in chains, break their world, break their will, make them slaves until their fury dies. The smoky one whispered, almost like laughter, or let them eat themselves. Already they turn on one another. Already their cities burn. Why waste fleets when they will tear their own throats? The debate raged for hours, and when the feed cut, the room was silent. I could feel the soldiers around me gripping their rifles tighter, as if they could shoot through the screens. But the truth was clear. The galaxy wasn't united. Not yet. But sooner or later, they would be. And when that day came, we wouldn't be ready. On Earth, the madness spread. The Iron Hand grew bolder, carving territories out of the countryside, their banners of black steel waving over towns that once pledged loyalty to the capital. Other factions rose too, some worshipping alien voices, others demanding holy war against the stars. The streets of the capital turned into war zones. Protesters faced soldiers, soldiers faced militias, militias faced each other. I walked through the ruins of a marketplace once, the air thick with smoke and screams. Vendors' stalls overturned, children crying, men with clubs bashing each other's skulls in over scraps of food. I didn't raise my rifle. I didn't stop them, because I finally understood. The aliens didn't need to invade again. They were winning already. But not all humans saw weakness. Some saw opportunity. In the chaos, warlords rose, men with guns, with hunger for power. They declared themselves protectors, saviors, kings. People followed them, not because they believed, but because fear makes even monsters look like shepherds. One warlord broadcast his message across the old networks. He sat on a throne made of welded rifles, his chest bare, scars glowing in the firelight. His voice was deep, steady, unshaken. 6 minutes, he said, proved what we are. Not prey, not slaves, predators. But predators do not beg politicians for protection. They do not kneel to cowards. They take what is theirs. The aliens fear us, and the galaxy will bow to us. His followers roared behind him, waving rifles, chanting his name. And across the planet, thousands more joined him. I watched the broadcast in silence, my jaw clenched, because part of me wanted to follow him too. The War Council tried to hold order, tried to call itself a government. But it was a corpse wearing a crown. Every day they shouted in chambers, while outside cities burned. I was ordered to patrol, to maintain peace. But there was no peace left to maintain. One night my squad was ambushed by civilians. Not soldiers, not militias, just starving men with kitchen knives. They swarmed us like animals, screaming for food, for medicine, for answers. We shot them. Not because we wanted to, because we had to. Afterwards, I sat in the dirt, staring at a woman's body. She still clutched a broken bottle in her hand, her eyes wide, mouth open as if she had died mid-cry. I wanted to vomit, because in her face I didn't see an enemy. I saw my own mother, and that was when it hit me. The aliens were right. We were animals. Weeks passed, and the transmissions grew darker. The alien councils argued louder, some demanding fleets, others whispering patience. But one message chilled me more than all the rest. It came not as words, but as images. A recording, sent like a warning. A human city, not ours, unknown, but destroyed. Buildings toppled, corpses in the streets, fire rising into the sky, and above it, not one ship, but many. Dozens, hundreds, shadowing the ruins like vultures. The message was clear. They were showing us the future. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat on the barracks roof again, staring at the stars, the old rifle across my lap. I thought of the valley, of the 6 minutes, of the officer's eyes. I thought of the woman with the bottle. I thought of the alien council laughing at our weakness. And for the first time, I felt something I hadn't felt since the war began. Not fury, not rage, hopelessness, because no matter how strong we fought, no matter how fast we killed, humanity itself was the enemy. The galaxy didn't have to destroy us. We were doing that job perfectly fine on our own. But still, deep down, a small fire burned. A part of me whispered that maybe, just maybe, if the galaxy came united against us, we'd show them what 6 minutes really meant. Not just for one army, not just for one world, but for the stars themselves. The first alien fleet died in 6 minutes. But it didn't matter anymore. Because by the time the galaxy moved its next piece, Earth was already burning itself alive. The Iron Hand controlled half the countryside now. Other factions carved their own borders in blood, fanatics who worshipped the aliens as gods, raiders who lived off chaos, warlords who called themselves kings. The capital was no longer a city. It was a fortress. Walls of steel and fire, streets patrolled by drones, every corner bristling with turrets. Not to keep the aliens out, but to keep our own people from tearing the council apart. I patrolled those streets every day. My boots crunched over broken glass, my rifle pointed at shadows, my eyes searching crowds that hated me more than they feared the aliens. Children spat when I passed. Women cursed. Men stared with quiet, burning hate. We weren't soldiers anymore. We were the enemy in our own land. The alien transmissions never stopped. We intercepted them daily, voices from across the stars arguing about our fate. But they weren't rushing. They didn't need to. Because while we bled each other, they tested us in ways small enough to keep us guessing. The first came as assassins. One night, a general's convoy exploded on the highway outside the capital. The wreckage burned for hours. The council screamed about human rebels, but I knew better. The blast pattern was too clean, too precise. Human hands didn't build bombs like that. The next week, power grids collapsed in 3 major cities at once. Blackouts, panic, Entire hospitals shut down, children choking in their beds as machines stopped breathing for them. No human militia had the reach for something like that. Then came the sightings. Civilians swore they saw shapes moving in the night, shadows too tall, too thin, eyes glowing in the dark. At first, the council called them lies, but then soldiers started disappearing on patrol. Entire squads gone. No gunfire, no struggle, just silence. The whisper was back. Not in mass death this time, but in small cuts, precise, surgical, patient. The galaxy wasn't here to conquer. They were here to bleed us dry. I saw it myself one night. We were running a sweep outside the capital, chasing reports of Iron Hand convoys moving weapons. The wasteland stretched endless and silent, the stars above sharp enough to cut. Then we saw it. A figure standing alone in the dirt. Tall, thin, cloaked in black that shimmered like oil. It didn't move when we raised our rifles. Didn't flinch when my commander shouted warnings. It just stood there, watching. And then, before my finger could squeeze the trigger, it was gone. Vanished. We swept the area for hours, nothing. But when we returned, one of our men was missing. No gunfire, no struggle, just gone. I never saw him again. Back in the capital, the paranoia spread. Every blackout, every explosion, every missing soldier was blamed on the aliens, or on the factions, or on traitors inside the council. Nobody trusted anyone anymore. I watched soldiers turn on their own officers, officers turn on their own generals, generals accuse politicians of treason. The council chambers echoed not with debate, but with gunfire, and still the alien signals whispered. They eat themselves. The infection deepens. 6 minutes was nothing. Every word felt like a blade twisting in my chest. The worst came in the cities. Food ran out first. Convoys were raided before they reached the walls. Famine spread faster than bullets. Then came disease, not alien-made, just filth, rats, water gone black. People dropped in the streets, corpses piled in alleys. No one buried them anymore. I patrolled one of those streets once, my rifle useless against hunger and rot. A boy crawled toward me, his ribs showing through skin, his hand reaching. I froze. For the first time in years, I felt fear. Not of death, not of battle, but of pity. I couldn't help him. I couldn't save him. So I walked on. His screams followed me until they stopped. The Iron Hand took advantage. They broadcast across the planet, their leader's voice booming over stolen satellites. Look at your cities. Look at your starving children. The council feeds itself while you die. Follow us, fight with us, or rot in cages. And people listened. Villages handed over their young to the Iron Hand. Cities collapsed into riots. Even soldiers defected, leaving barracks in the night to join the warlords. The capital grew smaller by the day, its walls closing tighter, its soldiers fewer. We weren't protecting Earth anymore. We were protecting ruins. One night, I sat again on the barracks roof, my rifle across my lap, the city below glowing with fire and smoke. I thought of the 6 minutes again, the valley, the officers' eyes. I thought of how proud we had been, how certain. And now, less than a year later, the only enemy left to kill was ourselves. The galaxy hadn't needed fleets. They hadn't needed armies. They had given us the whisper, and the rest we did willingly. But even in the ashes, something burned inside me. Not hope, not pride, rage, because even if the galaxy laughed at us, even if they thought we would eat ourselves until nothing was left, I wanted to prove them wrong. I wanted them to see that even in ruin, even in madness, humanity would not kneel. We might be broken, we might be bleeding. But when they finally came with fleets and armies, when they finally decided to crush us instead of waiting for us to collapse, I swore I would be there. and I would show them what 6 minutes really meant. Not against one army, not against one world, but against all of them. The sky burned again. Not from alien warships this time, but from our own fires. The capital had turned into a war zone. Barricades lined the streets, drones patrolled overhead, civilians huddled in basements while soldiers like me fought not aliens, but our own kind. The Iron Hand had finally made their move. Their banners of black steel flew over the suburbs, their convoys of stolen tanks rumbling through the ruins. They weren't just raiding anymore. They were invading, and we were losing. I fought in the southern district when the walls fell. Explosions shook the ground, smoke choked the air, screams drowned out the comms. Iron Hand soldiers poured through the breach, rifles blazing, their war cries echoing through the broken city. We met them head-on. Bullets tore through bodies, grenades shattered buildings, fire spread faster than we could put it out. It wasn't war. It was slaughter. And as I cut them down, one by one, I realized something. These weren't just rebels anymore. They were trained, disciplined, coordinated in ways militias never were. Someone had taught them, someone from the stars. After the battle, I found proof. A corpse lying in the rubble, its face half shattered, its body wrapped in armor I had never seen before. Not human. Not ours. I knelt beside it, my hands trembling as I tore the helmet free. The face underneath wasn't alien, not fully. It was human, but wrong. Skin too pale, eyes too dark, veins black as ink. A hybrid. Something made in a lab. And suddenly, everything made sense. The galaxy wasn't just waiting. They were feeding the fire. When I brought the body back, the council chambers erupted. Some screamed that the Iron Hand had struck deals with alien masters. Others accused the council itself of creating the hybrids. No one trusted anyone anymore. And above it all, the alien transmissions whispered louder than ever. They crumble. They divide. They are ready. Ready. For what? I had a feeling I knew. The proof came days later, when our satellites caught the first glimpse. Not one ship, not a shadow or a probe. A fleet, dozens of warships dark as obsidian, sliding through the void just beyond our system. Not attacking, not advancing, just waiting. The galaxy had made its decision. They weren't going to ignore us. They weren't going to let us bleed ourselves quietly. They were coming to finish what they started. The panic spread faster than fire. Civilians screamed in the streets, storming bunkers, fighting over scraps of food and water. Soldiers deserted in droves, running to protect their families instead of the city. Politicians vanished into hidden vaults, broadcasting empty promises from behind steel doors. The council called for unity. Nobody listened. In the barracks, the men whispered of escape. Some wanted to flee the planet, find ships, and scatter into the void. Others wanted to join the Iron Hand, convinced they were the only chance of survival. Me? I just cleaned my rifle, the old metal scarred, the barrel dark with blood and smoke. Because I knew there was no escape, no Iron Hand, no council. There was only the fight. That night, the fleet moved closer. The sky lit up with their shadows as they slipped past the outer moons. The comms filled with static, then with voices. Alien, broken, but translated enough to chill the blood. 6 minutes. We will see. We will end. The war wasn't coming. It was here. But something strange happened in the city. For the first time since the Whisper, for the first time since the factions rose, people stopped fighting each other. When the sky tore open with the light of alien engines, when the truth of extinction filled the air, every petty war suddenly looked small. The Iron Hand paused their assault. Civilians stopped rioting. Even the council shut its mouth. For one brief moment, Earth remembered the valley, remembered 6 minutes, and remembered that we weren't prey. I stood on the southern wall, staring at the horizon where the fleet descended. My heart pounded, my blood boiled, my hands clenched around the rifle like it was an extension of my bones. Behind me, soldiers lined up. Iron Hand defectors, council troops, starving civilians clutching whatever weapons they could find. For once, it didn't matter who they followed, what banners they raised, what names they cursed. Because above us, the galaxy had come. And every one of us knew the same truth. This wasn't about survival anymore. It was about fury. The kind of fury no alien could train for in 100 years. The kind of fury that burned when a species refused to kneel. The sirens wailed. The ships above shifted, their weapons glowing. The world held its breath. And I whispered the words that started it all. 6 minutes. Then the sky fell. The sky opened and hell poured down. The alien fleet descended like a storm of black wings, their engines burning holes in the heavens, their shadows swallowing the ruins of Earth. Dozens of ships, some small and sleek, others massive enough to blot out whole districts. Weapons glowed along their hulls, humming with a power that could erase cities in seconds. We stood beneath them, nothing but ants in the dirt, but ants with fire in their veins. The first strike split the earth. A beam of white light ripped through the northern wall, turning steel and concrete into molten rivers. Men screamed as they burned alive, their shadows painted on the ruins like ghosts. We didn't wait for orders. We couldn't. Orders meant nothing now. I raised my rifle and fired into the sky. It was useless, but it didn't matter. Around me, thousands more raised whatever weapons they had. Rifles, cannons, railguns scavenged from the wrecks of alien ships. The night turned into fire as Earth screamed back at the stars. And somehow, against all reason, the fleet flinched. Not much. Not enough to break. But enough to remind them. We weren't prey. The battle was chaos. Missiles streaked across the sky, tearing chunks from alien ships. Drones swarmed the streets, cutting down soldiers by the dozens. Tanks rolled through rubble, their cannons roaring as they punched holes in the dark giants above, and we fought like demons. I tore through alleys, rifle hot in my hands, grenades on my belt, knife in my teeth. Iron Hand fighters ran beside me, their banners of black steel replaced with nothing but rage. Civilians, half-starved, fought with stolen pistols, Molotovs, even kitchen knives. The city wasn't divided anymore. For 6 minutes, we were one. But unity doesn't stop death. I saw friends torn apart by drones, their screams echoing in my skull. I saw a tank swallowed whole by a beam of light, its crew's final curses drowned in fire. I saw children cut down in the crossfire, their small bodies trampled in the dirt as soldiers kept firing. The air stank of blood, smoke, and burning metal. My ears rang with endless gunfire, my vision blurred with dust and tears. And still, I fought. Because rage doesn't die. Halfway through, one of the alien ships fell. A railgun shot from the capital's core, our last hidden weapon, punched through its hull. The giant groaned, cracked, and fell from the sky like a dying god. It smashed into the suburbs, crushing buildings for miles, flames reaching the heavens. The men around me roared, a sound so loud it shook the ground. For a moment, I thought maybe, just maybe, we could win. But the galaxy hadn't sent fools this time. They adapted. Their formations shifted, their weapons recharged, their shadows closed in. Drones swarmed thicker, faster. Troops dropped from the ships, armored beasts with weapons that sliced men in half. We met them in the streets, hand to hand, blade to blade. I remember one clearly. A giant, its armor gleaming, its weapon sparking with blue fire. It swung, tearing a man in half beside me. I lunged, screaming, driving my knife into its throat. Black blood sprayed across my face as it collapsed, gurgling in shock. For a heartbeat, I stood over it, chest heaving, blood dripping, and I realized the fear in its eyes was the same as the first armies. Even now, even united, even with fleets and weapons and numbers, they still didn't understand. They had trained for war. But we were war. The minutes blurred. I lost count of time. I fought until my rifle clicked empty, until my knife broke, until my fists were nothing but bloodied bone. Around me, men screamed, died, rose again only to fall harder. Buildings collapsed, streets split open, the sky rained fire. But we didn't stop. We couldn't. Because 6 minutes had become something more. It wasn't just a number anymore. It was who we were. When the sun finally rose, the city was gone. The walls shattered, the council chambers burned, the streets drowned in corpses. But so were many of the alien ships. Their wrecks smoldered across the horizon, their shadows gone, their arrogance broken. We hadn't won. Not really. But we hadn't lost either. Because we were still standing. Bloody. Broken. Starving. But standing. I sat on the ruins of the southern wall, rifle across my knees, watching the smoke rise into the dawn. My body ached, my vision blurred, but my heart still pounded. Around me, survivors crawled from the rubble. Soldiers, civilians, Iron Hand fighters. No banners left, no sides left. Just men and women who refused to die. The fleet wasn't gone, not all of it. More ships still circled above, their weapons humming. They could finish us if they wanted, but they didn't. They hovered, they watched. And then, slowly, they pulled back. The message was clear. We hadn't been destroyed. We had been tested. And the galaxy had learned the same lesson twice. Earth wasn't prey. Earth was predator. I leaned back against the broken wall, staring at the sky as the last of the ships vanished into the void. My chest burned, my hands trembled, my eyes stung with smoke and tears. 6 minutes had become 6 hours. 6 hours of fire and blood and screams. And somehow, we were still here, not united, not whole, not even alive, really, but here. And that was enough. Because the galaxy now knew the truth. We weren't the strongest. We weren't the smartest. We weren't the most advanced, but we were the most dangerous. And no matter what came next, no matter how many fleets, no matter how many centuries of training, they would never forget. 6 minutes, 6 hours, 6 lifetimes if we had to. We would fight. And we would never kneel. The smoke never left the sky. Weeks passed after the battle, and still the air reeked of ash and blood. Whole districts of the capital lay in ruins, blackened skeletons of buildings stretching into the horizon. The ground was littered with wreckage, alien steel twisted with human bone, rusting tanks fused with melted glass, corpses buried where they fell. It wasn't a city anymore. It was a grave. And yet, people crawled out of the rubble. They were thin, scarred, hollow-eyed, but alive. They carried water in cracked buckets, built fires from shattered furniture, cooked scraps of meat scavenged from ruined stores. Children played in alleys littered with bullet shells, their laughter brittle but real. Life clung stubbornly to the ruins, because that's what humans do. I walked those streets every day, my rifle slung across my back, my boots crunching over glass and ash. People looked at me with the same eyes they once filled with hate. Not love, not respect. Something else. Fear mixed with gratitude. They knew what I was, what men like me had done. Enhanced soldiers, the Black Hounds, the government's monsters, the ones who ripped through alien armor with bare hands, the ones who killed rebels and civilians alike when the council demanded. And now we were all that was left. The council was gone, burned with its chambers, buried under the rubble it had tried to rule from. The Iron Hand was broken, its leader dead in the southern district, his body torn apart by alien fire. The warlords had scattered, their armies crushed or starved. What remained wasn't nations, wasn't factions, it was survivors. And survivors don't care about flags. They care about food, about water, about waking up tomorrow. I saw it in their eyes every time they begged me for help. And every time I gave what I could. A ration, a canteen, a rifle, if they were strong enough to use it, because no council ruled anymore. No generals gave orders. Only men like me, the ones too stubborn to die. But above it all, the galaxy watched. The fleet never returned. Not yet. But our satellites picked up their shadows at the edge of the system, circling like wolves. They had seen enough. For now, some transmissions still broke into our networks. Voices laughing, voices arguing, voices whispering. They hadn't decided what to do with us. Not fully, but they hadn't forgotten either. They never would. 6 minutes had become a scar carved into the stars. One evening, I stood on the ruins of the southern wall again, staring at the horizon. The sun dipped low, painting the sky red with smoke and fire. I remembered the first time. The valley, the arrogance in the aliens' eyes, the 6 minutes of fury, and I thought of what came after. The whisper, the factions, the civil war, the fleets. We had survived, somehow. But I wondered if survival was enough, because survival is not victory. Survival is a pause, a breath, a waiting. And I knew the galaxy was waiting too. A boy approached me as I sat on the wall. Thin, dirty, his face smeared with ash. He carried a broken rifle too big for his hands. He stopped in front of me, his eyes wide but steady. "Are they coming back?" he asked. I looked at him for a long time. "Yes," I said. His lip trembled, but he didn't cry. He only nodded, gripping the broken rifle tighter. "Then we'll be ready," he whispered. I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, but because I saw the truth in his eyes. He didn't mean the council. He didn't mean the armies, or the Iron Hand, or the Black Hounds. He meant humanity. Broken, starving, barely breathing, but ready. That night I dreamed again. The valley, the officers' eyes, the fire, the screams. But this time I didn't see pity. I didn't see arrogance. I saw fear. Not just in one alien's eyes. In all of them. And when I woke, I knew why. It wasn't because of the 6 minutes. Not really. It was because we had no limits. The galaxy trained for centuries, planned for centuries, fought by rules older than their stars. But we had none. We fought dirty. We fought desperate. We fought insane. And that was something they could never prepare for. In the weeks that followed, survivors began to rebuild. Not nations, not governments, just communities. Villages rising from ruins, markets from rubble, homes from ash. They didn't look to the stars with fear anymore. They looked with rage. Every child who lost a parent, every woman who buried her husband, every man who carried scars in his flesh. They didn't dream of peace. They dreamed of payback. And I knew one day we would give it to them. For now, Earth was silent. But silence is only ever the breath before the scream, and when that scream came, it wouldn't last 6 minutes. It wouldn't last 6 hours. It would last until the stars themselves burned out. Because that's what we are, not prey, not slaves, not even survivors. Predators. The kind that doesn't stop. The kind that doesn't forgive. The kind the galaxy should have left alone. I sat on the wall until dawn, rifle across my knees, the boy sleeping beside me with his broken weapon. The sun rose through the smoke, red as blood, and for the first time in years I smiled, because I knew the truth. The war wasn't over, it had only just begun, and when the galaxy came back, they would learn again. 6 minutes was only the start.